Classic Hollywood is often remembered for its glamour, style, and extraordinary acting. But sometimes, the line between acting and reality was blurred, with unforgettable scenes where the emotions were not just scripted, they were real. From intense love scenes to heart-wrenching moments of personal pain, many of Hollywood's greatest stars channeled their personal struggles into their performances, creating some of the most iconic, and at times controversial, moments in film history. In this video, we'll explore 8 classic Hollywood actors whose emotional scenes went beyond acting, capturing genuine moments of shock, heartbreak, and vulnerability that still haunt audiences today. These are the stories of passion, trauma, and raw emotion, moments where the actors gave more than just a performance, they gave their truth. Let's dive into the world of these legendary stars and their unfiltered, unforgettable performances. 1. Marlon Brando and Maria Schneider. Last Tango in Paris, 1972. One of the most infamous moments in Hollywood history comes from Last Tango in Paris. This controversial film became notorious for an emotionally charged and sexually explicit scene involving Marlon Brando and Maria Schneider. In the infamous butter scene, Schneider, playing the female lead, was kept in the dark about the scene's true nature. Director Bernardo Bertolucci and Marlon Brando intentionally withheld information from her, hoping to capture a raw, authentic reaction. What resulted, however, was more than a performance. Schneider's reaction was a mix of shock, discomfort, and genuine emotional trauma. The scene, meant to feel intimate and authentic, left Schneider feeling deeply distressed. She later revealed that she was emotionally scarred by the incident for years. The unplanned emotional weight of the moment was captured on film, giving it a sense of rawness that still resonates with audiences today. Brando's intensity and the director's manipulation blurred the line between acting and reality. For Schneider, what was intended to be a groundbreaking film scene became a deeply personal and painful experience. The backlash against Last Tango in Paris was swift and fierce, sparking discussions about ethics in film production, consent, and the responsibility filmmakers have towards actors. Despite the outrage, this moment remains a haunting reminder of how far Hollywood once pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable in the name of authenticity. 2. Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh. Gone with the Wind, 1939. One of the most iconic films in Hollywood history, Gone with the Wind, featured an unforgettable kissing scene between Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh. The chemistry between these two stars was undeniable, but what many don't know is that the intensity of their scene wasn't entirely scripted. In the famous moment where Rhett Butler, Gable, passionately kisses Scarlett O'Hara, Leigh, it's clear that Gable's energy was overwhelming. His embrace was forceful, and the kiss left Leigh feeling genuinely shaken and dizzy. Vivien Leigh later admitted that she was caught off guard by the power of Gable's kiss. Her reaction, seen on screen, wasn't the result of careful planning or rehearsal. It was an honest response to the physicality of the moment. Leigh confessed that Gable's embrace left her feeling both physically and emotionally disoriented, an experience that perfectly fit her character's turmoil. The tension between them wasn't just for show, it was real, making the scene one of Hollywood's most memorable. Behind the scenes, Leigh often found Gable to be both charming and overwhelming. The relationship between Scarlett and Rhett was one of love, conflict, and passion, and this raw emotion was not just acted but felt. Gable's intensity in the scene mirrored the tension in their characters' relationship. What audiences saw wasn't just a carefully choreographed romantic moment. It was a true, unscripted burst of emotion, where the actors' real reactions blended seamlessly with their on-screen personas. The chemistry between Gable and Leigh helped create a timeless scene in film history, one that remains a symbol of the passionate, often volatile love between the characters. 3. Marilyn Monroe. The Misfits, 1961. Marilyn Monroe's final completed film, The The Misfits is often remembered not only for its star-studded cast but also for the deeply personal emotions Monroe brought to the screen. By the time she filmed The Misfits, Monroe was already struggling with significant personal issues, including depression, insomnia, and a failing marriage to playwright Arthur Miller, who also wrote the film. Monroe's vulnerability wasn't just part of her character, it was a reflection of her own internal struggles. In several key scenes, especially those where her character breaks down emotionally, the tears Monroe shed were not just for the camera. They were the result of real heartbreak, fatigue, and loneliness. As she wept on screen, she wasn't merely acting, she was channeling her pain and sorrow into the performance. Co-star Clark Gable and the crew later admitted that watching Monroe's breakdowns felt almost intrusive. It was as if they were witnessing the unraveling of her soul on screen. Monroe's raw emotion turned these moments into some of the most haunting in Hollywood history. The scene in which she cries, particularly, was heartbreaking in its authenticity. Her personal struggles and exhaustion, coupled with her commitment to her craft, created a deeply powerful performance. Unfortunately, The Misfits became Monroe's last completed film before her tragic death the following year. What audiences saw wasn't just a performance, it was the real, vulnerable Marilyn, pouring every ounce of her pain into her role. The authenticity of her portrayal left an indelible mark on both the film and her legacy, turning The Misfits into a poignant testament to Monroe's complex personal and professional life. 4. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? 1966. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton were already known as one of Hollywood's most passionate and turbulent couples long before they starred together in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? Their real-life marriage was fiery, filled with love, jealousy, and constant clashes, and that same intensity poured onto the screen. In this film, they played Martha and George, a middle-aged couple locked in endless emotional battles. But what unfolded during filming went far beyond acting. Director Mike Nichols encouraged both stars to draw from their real relationship, telling them to use their personal frustrations as fuel for their characters' pain. The result was electric. Every insult, every tear, every scream between them came from a deeply personal place. When Elizabeth hurled bitter words, it wasn't only Martha speaking, it was Elizabeth releasing years of anger and heartbreak. Burton's reactions were just as real. His rage and exhaustion weren't rehearsed but genuine responses to his wife's intensity. The set often felt like a real battleground, and even the crew found it hard to watch at times. Yet, that raw honesty created one of cinema's most emotionally charged performances ever captured. Critics called Taylor's performance fearless, and for good reason. She didn't just act, she bared her soul. Her portrayal earned her an Academy Award, but it also revealed the emotional cost of such realism. What the audience saw wasn't fiction, it was a couple tearing through the layers of their real relationship, transforming pain into powerful art. 5. Montgomery Clift and Elizabeth Taylor, A Place in the Sun, 1951. Before Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? Elizabeth Taylor had already shared another deeply emotional on-screen connection, this time with Montgomery Clift in A Place in the Sun. Their chemistry was undeniable, both tender and tragic, built not just on scripted romance but genuine affection. Off-screen, Taylor and Clift shared an extraordinary bond. She once called him her soulmate, and that closeness bled naturally into their scenes together. Clift, a brilliant yet deeply troubled actor, was battling inner conflicts about his identity and emotions. Taylor, young and radiant, became his confidant and emotional anchor. During the filming of their romantic scenes, especially the famous lake sequence, Clift's longing and vulnerability were completely real. His eyes, full of love and pain, told a truth that no direction could ever produce. When their characters looked at each other, the world seemed to disappear. Taylor later said that every time Monty gazed at her on screen, she could feel his real affection, his unspoken sadness. It wasn't performance, it was connection. Their emotional honesty gave the film its haunting beauty. Even after the cameras stopped rolling, Taylor remained protective of Clift, standing by him through his struggles and tragic decline. What made A Place in the Sun unforgettable wasn't the script or the direction. It was the raw humanity between two people who understood each other deeply. Every glance, every whisper, every touch carried real emotion. It's what made their love story timeless, and what made their friendship one of Hollywood's most genuine and heartbreaking relationships. 6. Shelley Winters, Lolita, 1962. Shelley Winters was no stranger to playing complex, often difficult roles, but her performance in Lolita stands as one of the most emotionally intense moments of her career. In the film, she portrayed Charlotte Hayes, a desperate and delusional mother whose obsession with a younger man drives her to extremes. The role demanded vulnerability, humiliation, and rage, and Shelley delivered each emotion with a startling authenticity. Director Stanley Kubrick, known for his perfectionist style, pushed his actors to their limits to elicit real emotions on screen. He often pushed Winters into deeply uncomfortable situations, demanding raw reactions from her. During one particularly heated argument scene, Shelley reportedly broke down in tears for real. The anger, frustration, and embarrassment she felt were not part of the script. They were her own, channeled through the character. Her trembling voice, the genuine pain in her eyes, and the frustration in her every movement were the result of emotional strain, both from the intense character and the demands of the director. Winters later admitted that the experience took a significant toll on her mentally. Kubrick's method of extracting true emotional responses from his actors gave Lolita a disturbing realism that lingered long after the film ended. The film's unsettling atmosphere wasn't just created by the story, it was brought to life by Shelley Winters' gut-wrenching authenticity. As Charlotte Hayes, Winters' pain wasn't merely a performance. It was a woman at her breaking point, struggling with loneliness, obsession, and rejection. That real emotional turmoil made her role one of the most haunting in classic Hollywood. 7. James Dean, Rebel Without a Cause, 1955. James Dean became the face of teen rebellion with his iconic role as Jim Stark in Rebel Without a Cause. The film, with its exploration of teenage angst, alienation, and emotional turmoil, captured the essence of post-war youth culture. But what many don't realize is that Dean's portrayal wasn't just acting, it was deeply personal, a reflection of his own pain and inner turmoil. James Dean's childhood was filled with emotional neglect and personal struggles, and these experiences deeply shaped his performances. When he shouted, cried, or experienced frustration in Rebel Without a Cause, it wasn't just his character reacting, it was Dean reliving his past. One of the most famous moments, the "You're tearing me apart" scene, became a cinematic legend. But those words weren't just lines on a script. They were James Dean's raw emotions pouring out, unfiltered and unforced. Director Nicholas Ray later revealed that Dean often improvised, drawing from his own painful memories to make his character feel more authentic. He would use his real-life struggles to channel Jim Stark's inner conflict, creating a performance that wasn't just believable, it was heartbreaking. Co-stars recalled that watching Dean's scenes often felt uncomfortable because it was as if they were witnessing a person break open on screen. The vulnerability he displayed was real, and that's why Dean's portrayal still resonates with audiences today. James Dean's performance in Rebel Without a Cause wasn't just method acting, it was emotional truth, captured in a way that still speaks to audiences over 6 decades later. His pain, his anger, his confusion were all deeply tied to his own life, making his character one of the most raw and genuine portrayals of teen rebellion in cinema history. 8. Ingrid Bergman, Casablanca, 1942. Ingrid Bergman's performance in Casablanca remains one of the most iconic in film history. The emotional depth she brought to her role as Ilsa Lund in the final airport scene wasn't just brilliant acting, it was pure, unscripted emotion. Director Michael Curtiz intentionally kept Bergman in the dark about the film's ending to capture a more genuine, heartfelt reaction. She had no idea which man her character would ultimately choose, Rick, Humphrey Bogart, or Victor, Paul Henreid. This deliberate uncertainty resulted in one of the most authentic moments of emotional conflict ever captured on film. When Ilsa says goodbye to Rick at the airport, her confusion, sorrow, and admiration are completely real. Bergman was experiencing the emotions of the scene for the first time, just as her character was. Her tearful eyes, the mix of surprise and heartache, were not acted. They were the result of a woman caught in an emotional storm, not knowing what the future would hold. What audiences saw wasn't a scripted farewell. It was Ingrid Bergman's real feelings captured on film. The confusion, loss, and the emotional weight she carried were as genuine as the love story she portrayed. This moment, with her raw honesty, has become one of the most memorable and emotional scenes in film history. It proves that sometimes the best performances come from actors who don't just play their characters, they live them. Bergman's honesty in that moment turned Casablanca into one of cinema's most enduring classics. 9. Janet Leigh, Psycho, 1960. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho is known for many things, but one of the most unforgettable moments is Janet Leigh's infamous shower scene. What makes this scene so terrifying isn't just the violence, it's the raw, genuine terror in Leigh's performance. Hitchcock, the master of suspense, purposely kept Janet Leigh in the dark about when and how the violent scene would unfold. She didn't know when the killer would strike or how intense the attack would be. The result? Janet Leigh's reaction of genuine fear and panic. As the shadow of the killer approaches her, her wide-eyed terror wasn't staged, it was completely real. Leigh later admitted that she was so shaken by the scene that she avoided taking showers for months afterward. The shock, the trembling, and the helplessness she displayed were not part of the script. They were the product of Hitchcock's psychological manipulation, which led to one of the most iconic and chilling moments in horror history. The combination of Hitchcock's direction and Leigh's raw, unscripted terror created a scene that is still studied by filmmakers today. What audiences saw wasn't just acting, it was a woman genuinely terrified for her life. That rawness, that genuine fear, is what made the shower scene in Psycho so unforgettable. Janet Leigh wasn't playing a victim, she was a woman caught in a real-life nightmare, making the scene one of the most authentic moments in the history of horror films.